Hi everyone, it's M.S.G, and today I'm going to be doing my Deceptors Detachment review for Chaos Space Marines in 10th edition. This has been heavily anticipated and has been mentioned a couple of times in the comments, but I feel that today would be the day to give them justice. I am trying to crank out as many of these as I can before I do Renegade Raiders in the new year. So with that said though, let's just get on into the rest of the video. So first up, we're going to just be covering pretty much what the video normally covers. So a brief look at the actual detachment rule, an overview individually of each enhancement and stratagem, as well as any kind of combos or units which are highlights of the detachment, overall strengths and any weaknesses which might hamper the overall efficacy of the detachment itself, and an overall rating based on the information which I've shared. At any point during this, if you feel like you need to pause, or if you feel like you need to just take a breather, then that's fine. Just pause and read the info, because again, much like the other videos, there's going to be quite a lot. But with that said, let's just get into it. Next up is the actual rule. The name of the rule is Masters of Misdirection. There are those warbands that number among their ranks liars, schemers, and infiltrators of far more prodigious skill than most heretics. Employing labyrinthine plots, they unnerve their enemies and force them to chase ghosts and shadows. They embed themselves within combat zones long before showing their hand, seeding chaos cults, identifying key targets, and feeding misinformation to their foes. In the declare battle formation step, you can select a number of legionaries and cultist mob units from your army. Until the end of the battle, those units and any character units attached to them, excluding epic heroes, have the infiltrator's ability. The maximum number of units you can select in this way depends on the battle size, as shown below. So for your average 2,000 point game, you're looking to 3 units of legionaries and 3 units of cultists. Obviously, without any kind of smoke and mirrors, this is the Alpha Legion detachment, so it's very thematic that they're able to get this ability. It's very, very lore accurate in my opinion, because the Alpha Legion do use cultists quite a lot in order to infiltrate. Obviously they're quite hands-on despite being very subterfuge heavy, but that's what it is. I think it's a pretty decent rule. So obviously, because it's at the declared battle formation step, as I've tagged in the center of the screen here if you want to take a look. In the order stated below, both players secretly note down which of their leaders' units will start their battle attached. So for example, which leader unit, so like a lord for example, is attached to which bodyguard unit, so chosen or legionaries. Which of their units will start the battle embarked within transport models. They must specify which units are embarked and which of their units will start in reserves, including strat reserves as well. So when both players have done so, declare them to their opponent. So pretty much you can adapt, in all honesty. Sometimes you might want to bring a couple of legionary units without any characters and you just put them in the board. Sometimes you want to use a lord and a legionary unit to do it. You can genuinely switch it up. You don't get to use them on epic heroes, which is what I've highlighted as a little weakness. So for example, Abaddon having infiltrate. Cypher doesn't really care because Cypher's already got lone operative and can just advance and just move up and shoot. That being said, you can still use this with any characters attached to those units. So the most common unit you'll use this on is a Lord and Legionaries, because they're like the bread and butter workhorse unit of the detachment in Chaos Space Marines in general, really. It's very unlikely you'll be using characters with cultist mob units, but it's not unheard of. You could potentially use 3 units of 20 cultist mobs to move block any army with scout moves, as scout moves need to not end within 9 inches of any enemy units. So if you manage to use this appropriately, you can cause a lot of inconvenience for your opponent. So for example, units, Emperor's Children are a big army that use scout moves and infiltrate, so stopping the Tormentors getting on the objective, stopping the World Eaters from doing 10 million scout moves at the start of the game, being able to screen for teleports against Grey Knights, any kind of deep strike heavy army is just going to be very, very useful. It's very, very hampered, not useful, into this detachment, so this detachment is good at dealing with that. One of the big weaknesses is that it obviously doesn't provide a direct damage or durability buff. Like I said, it's very thematic, but it's just not going to, you know, increase your damage or durability. And as like I mentioned here, it's just great into other infiltrator units. So scouts, tormentors for Emperor's Children are the main one that I can think of off the top of my head, as I am an Emperor's Children player. But yeah, I still think it's pretty good. First up, we have the enhancements. So this is the Cursed Fang. This is 10 points. A Heretic Astartes infantry model only. Improve the armor penetration characteristic of the bearer's melee weapons by 1, and the bearer's melee weapons have the precision ability. I've given it a 7 out of 10, which is good. It's decently priced, so 10 points is actually pretty good, especially for an increase in melee. Having that increased AP by 1 in melee is really, really useful in a majority of the circumstances. It's a very good counter to Armour of Contempt. Not particularly great into invul units, because I believe the Chaos Lord or the Master of Executions, who you probably want to use this on, has precision anyway. The Chaos Lord having precision is actually pretty good, though. Like, if I was to bring it, I would probably bring it on a Chaos Lord. So getting an extra AP, and most of the time you're fighting Space Marine units, they're either on a 3-up save or a 2-up save. Bringing that AP 2 on a hammer or the axe for the Master of Executions is base kit anyway, so you force them to a 4-up, then pop Armour of Contempt to bring it to a 3. You can kind of use this to counter that. So for example, if you're going into something like Victrix Honor Guard, you can quite reliably get to a 4-up and potentially even a 5-up with quite a lot of damage too. So I've mentioned here as well, this enhancement stacks with the Chance for Glory ability, which is the Chaos Lord's like Super Saiyan mode, giving you +1 attack, +1 strength, and improving your AP and melee by 1 as well. With the Demon Hammer, that's 6 attacks at strength 9, -4 AP, 3 damage each, with dev wounds and precision. If there's a character which you need to kill, this is an extremely good way to do it. As I'm sure people are already aware, even if you're not a Chaos Space Marines player and you've been playing against Chaos Space Marines, it's very likely you have seen how lethal a Lord can be in a unit. They are incredibly hard hitting. They're not just there for show, they are primarily the big damage dealer within the unit. The Legionaries do hit hard, so like it's very similar to how the Emperor's Children play with their Lord Exultants. So your main damage dealer is the Lord Exultant, but other than that, you do have quite a lot of hard-hitting like infantry on top of that as well. So the Legionaries with the melee weapons. But yeah, I'm getting off topic. This is actually a very decent enhancement. Second, we have the Shroud of Obfuscation. Heretic Astartes infantry model only. The bearer has stealth and lone operative. 15 points, I've given it an 8 out of 10. I think it's actually great. So it's good on a potential solo unit like a Sorcerer in Terminator armor or a lone Chaos Lord with a jump pack. So if you want extra damage, Sorcerer in Terminator armor acts as a wonderful but slow potential damage amplifier for your army with the Death Hex. Your durability is quite high, as on the on the Sorcerer, especially in the Terminator armor, because you've got the 2-up, 4-up, and then obviously you can use the Familiar to blank damage. You're able to get into riskier places, which allow you to do actions or even capture objectives. But the problem is low mobility. While that can be alleviated somewhat with advance rerolls, because he obviously gives his unit advance reroll, advance and charge rolls, which is nice. In my opinion, it's probably best optimally used on a either a Master of Executions or primarily a Jump Lord, which I think is fantastic. So while the Jump Pack Lord isn't as hard hitting in melee, it has a lot better mobility. So I think it's like 12 to 14 inch movement with fly, which is very, very nice. You can get into places that get out of really rough scenarios if you need to, position a lot more appropriately. You can there's so much stuff you can do with him that is quite frankly ridiculously good. For example, if you have an MSU unit on an objective, you can pretty much just send the the Jump Pack Lord through, and then obviously just start turning that 5-man unit of Space Marines into a lot of stuff. what I'm going to do is, just to elucidate my point, because the Chaos Lord in jump pack armor is actually pretty... It's overlooked in my opinion, but I do think it is actually great, especially with this enhancement. Obviously, you know, you can't stop the Overwatch because Overwatch is... well, Overwatch it used to be 12, but now obviously you can do it for 24. But what I can do is, I'm just going to get his stat line up, and I'm going to go and grab some dice, so just bear with me very, very briefly. There we go. So, 12-inch movement, yeah, there we go. So he's got Power Fist, 5 attacks. So we're going to roll some dice while we're here. This is into a unit of just regular intercessors, so T4, 3 up, 2 wounds each. We'll do Dark Pact for sustained hits. We pass the Dark Pact, that's fine. 2s, even with a Power Fist, he hits on 2s. So we've got 3 6s. That is surprisingly high. We've missed the 1, so that gives us an extra 2 hits. Strength 8, so 2s. No rerolls, so that's 5 at AP 2. Not a single one passed, so I've got 3 1s, a 2, and a 4, so that's just killed 5 intercessors. Obviously I spiked quite heavily on the rolls there, but that's just... you could do even better than that in all honesty and just get an absolute boatload of attacks through. But yeah, I think he hits quite hard for what you're paying for. I mean, he's only like, what? Let me just check his points cost quickly. 80 points, he'd be 95 with this enhancement. Again, it's just a fun, useful skirmishing unit, a pain in the arse for your opponent pretty much. A weakness of this though, there are models and units which can ignore lone operative, so any kind of fast moving unit can kind of get close to him and just shoot him, so anything Eldar, even World Eaters are quite fast if provoked, shall we say. On top of that as well, we also have to deal with something like a Vindicare Assassin, where a Vindicare Assassin can literally just target you wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you've got lone operative, they can still shoot you if they can see you, which is a bit of a nightmare to deal with, but there's not that many people bringing Vindicare Assassins, unfortunately, despite them being incredibly cool. But yeah, so that works in our favour. So third enhancement we've got is Deceptors. So on the Deceptors, Detachment is Falsehood. It's 10 points, so I'm not even going to waste your time. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to tell you there. It's really, really bad. This is a 1 out of 10. Erebus personally designed this enhancement. It's genuinely trash. There is absolutely no reason. Well, I'll argue devil's advocate. So it's 10 points. So it's quite cheap. So you can set your unit up in reserves instead of deploying them on the battlefield, which is nice. But you can get deep strike from a unit that's not even on the table anyway. So it's kind of pointless. But we can discuss that in a second. The actual enhancement itself, for layman's terms, you can't do it on a Terminator or a jump pack, so it's literally just your regular power armor Chaos Lord. In your declare battle formation step, you can set the bearer up in reserves instead of setting it up on the battlefield. If you do, in the reinforcement step of one of your movement phases, you can select one model in a friendly legionaries or chosen unit that has 2 or more models remaining and is on the battlefield, excluding attached units. Then select a model and destroy it, so you basically can't fight on death or anything like that. It's just gone, no rules, you just lose a model. And the bearer is set up as close as possible to where that model is. So basically, you keep a Chaos Lord in deep strike, you then get a unit of chosen, run up the board, and in the start of your movement phase, when your deep striking units come in, you can replace a chosen with a Chaos Lord. Absolutely pointless. And then it counts as obviously being attached as a leader. This is this is stupid. You're killing a model in your unit to replace it with a Chaos Lord, which in most circumstances is a terrible waste. So, for example, we've already got Rhinos, we've already got Land Raiders. You know, your majority of the time, if you're bringing Chosen and Legionaries, you're bringing a Rhino to ferry them about. Don't need to really worry about a 5 or a 10 man unit of Chosen or Legionaries to get them where they need to be, because the majority of the time, like I said, the Rhino just acts as a incredibly good transport vehicle for us. In my opinion, it's one of the best transports in the game, simply just due to how cheap it is and how efficient it is. it's just way better to attach a Lord to the unit anyway, because you don't really want to lose any kind of models, especially on a chosen unit, or even a legionary unit. Like, yeah, your argument could be, oh well, I'd much rather take a legionary out than, you know, chosen, so I can put the Chaos Lord in. The Chaos Lord hits way harder, but you've got to understand, the majority of the time you bring in legionaries it's very similar to Infractors in Emperor's Children for the Lord Exultant. The legionaries buff the damage of the Lord by giving him reroll ones or reroll all wounds on an objective. Off an objective, it's reroll ones. And that obviously, you know, with the Demon Hammer allows him to proc more, potentially, dev wounds. In addition to that, you've also got to acknowledge the fact that the legionaries themselves are just bodyguards. Like, you're not really caring if a legionary dies. Like, it's a chainsword. Why would you want to take down one of your bodyguard units when you can just put them in a rhino and get that extra ablative couple of wounds? And plus, the legionaries are actually better than Infractors, in my opinion, because they do have the heavy melee weapons. You know, the 3 attacks at strength 8 minus 2 damage. Like, they're very, very strong. But either way, I think this is genuinely an absolutely horrible, horrible enhancement. This is trash. However, we are definitely saving the best till last here. So Soul Link, 5 points, Heretic Astartes infantry model only. At the start of your command phase, you can select one other Heretic Astartes infantry character model from your army, excluding epic heroes. Until the start of your next command phase, the bearer gains the Psychic keyword and replaces the bearer's datasheet abilities with the datasheet abilities of the character you have selected. I have given this a 10 out of 10. I think this is an auto-include. I'm going to gush about it in a second, but I'll just briefly cover the main, like the very tertiary reasons as to why I think it's really good. But first of all, it's 5 points, so it's really, really cheap. You are bringing this every single game, in my opinion. This is a spectacularly useful enhancement and a lot of versatility to it. You can use it in Deep Strike. So, for example, if you have a sorcerer in Terminator armor with the Shroud and you want to Deep Strike him turn 2, you can, you know, let's say, I don't know, you infiltrated the Lord with Soul Link and you, or even a Master of Executions because it says infantry model, you can use a Master of Executions too. Slap Soul Link on him, you can then get Death Hex, which is really, really good. So if you're moving further up, you can use the Soul Link on the Master of Executions, Death Hex a unit that you want to charge into, move up because you've infiltrated, so you should be able to get close to your enemy, and then run in and hit them at an increased AP. Obviously this will then stack with the other AP from other sources, so if you're using the Cursed Fang, if you're using the Chaos Lord's Chance for Glory, that brings you up to AP minus 5, which is absolutely, that's crazy levels of damage. But yeah, so the main thing, like I said here, the ability to get any character's abilities on any Heretic Astartes infantry model is absolutely absurd. While this is incredibly complicated and arguably the best, it's easily the best enhancement in the entire detachment, in my opinion. There's a ridiculous amount of combinations you can use. So, for example, giving a Master of Executions the Chaos Lords -1 to command point costs when it comes to stratagems. Chance for Glory abilities, so you can get precision plus 3 damage dev wounds. So that's strength 8 minus 3 damage dev wounds, rerolling hits if the target's slightly damaged, and rerolling wounds if the target is below half strength. Even then, you can get the reroll wounds from being with the Legionary squad as well. You can give it to the Dark Commune, which is a very, very weird one, but I did a bit of research rather and figured it was actually pretty strong. So getting the Dark Commune with the Chaos Lord's abilities, so it works on the every part of the unit. It doesn't work on just the the demagogue, the guy who's in charge. It works on the unit. I had to stipulate that and I had to double check because I originally thought it would just work on the demagogue. It doesn't. So you get your cultists with the swords, your other guys, they get +1 strength, AP and damage in melee, which, while the cultists are not going to be hitting very hard, it's still pretty nice to have. And you also get 1 free stratagem too. well, if you're using the 1 command point ones, it's free. Furthermore, you can also use, like I said earlier, Death Hex and reroll advance and charges. So if you want to make sure you want to get that ability, that unit in to charge range and hit harder, you obviously have the ability to do that now. Particularly stands out on a Master of Possessions with 5 or 10 possessed. So your Master of Possessions is already quite quick, as are your possessed. I believe they are 8-inch movement. You basically run them forward, get +1 to your move from doing the sacrificial dagger thing on the Master of Possessions. You then get to... obviously we don't have access to advance and charge, which is a bit of a bummer in this detachment. It would have been nice. But you do get the ability to move your Master of Possessions up. Oh no, you wouldn't get to use the dagger actually, because you've switched thingy. But I mean, being able to reroll your charge rolls and then get -1 AP on possessed against a target is insanely strong. Considering the AP1 base kit and Armour of Contempt just nullifies that. Having the ability to get AP2 and force your opponent to say, do you really want to use Armour of Contempt? To bring them 3-up power armor saves to a 5-up, 4-up to a 6-up, and a 5 or 6 just goes straight through. You don't get a save, which is fantastic, and it's obviously 2 damage, so that's really good. And dev wounds, because it's possessed. Only weakness is that it can't be used on epic heroes. So Hero on Blackheart, who has also got a new model recently, which is something I recommend you check out if you haven't seen that already. Abaddon, Harken World Claimer, Bile, Cypher, etc. Fairly reasonable with being able to get Abaddon's War Master abilities or Cypher's Vectora plus Lone Operative on a unit would be a bit too strong. So the fact that, and it says datasheet abilities, so because Lone Operative is a datasheet, you can copy it. Doesn't mean you can copy enhancements, unfortunately, which would have been very good because you can just steal the Chaos Lord or Terminator Sorcerer and have 2 Lone Operative units running around because of the Shroud of Obfuscation. It's the data sheet. So because the Lone Operative and Stealth get added actively, after you have to give them the ability, it's not innately on the data sheet, you don't get it. But either way, this is still like, it's a 10 out of 10. This is a ridiculously good enhancement. Next up, we have Detonator. I've given this a 1 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, depending on the matchup. So I'll just explain it briefly. Any phase just after you've destroyed a unit, an enemy model, excluding Titanic models, that has the Deadly Demise ability. So 1 Heretic Astartes character within 18 inches of that enemy model when it was destroyed. Your opponent does not roll to determine whether mortal wounds are inflicted. It automatically inflicts mortal wounds, but your opponent gets to roll the amount. So I'll just get the big one out of the way for the 1 out of 10. It's useless when there's no Deadly Demise in your opponent's army. You literally will never use this. It's very unlikely. So majority of armies do have some kind of, Deadly Demise. Even on like armies that you wouldn't believe have it, like, I don't know, Orcs, getting a truck blown up or something like that and then detonating it and doing all that mortal wound damage to people around it's pretty good. Majority of the time, because boys and all the likes are around 1 to 2 wounds, you're probably killing a couple of, you're taking a decent chunk out of whatever it is you are, what's nearby, whatever you've just blown up. It's also pretty good into demons as well, because obviously demons do have Deadly Demise, and being able to essentially, like Corn Demons for example, Corn Demons tend to stick together most of the time and castle, and then they'll have that like go turn where they just run at you and try to kill you. Killing a Bloodthirster from range, while difficult obviously because of the 2-up 4-up, if you do manage to kill it, then obviously you've got the ability to pretty much just go, yeah, here's D6 mortal wounds for every unit that's within 6 inches, which is fantastic. And also being 18 inches across from the model, you don't have to have it in line of sight, which is really, really good. You can just do it from behind cover if you've got a unit that's behind cover. It's also very good into castle style armies, so even if for example you're getting someone like, I don't know, Abaddon for example, or a Hellbrute, if you kill a vehicle next to that unit, because obviously a majority of the time the vehicles are going to be there to get the full rerolls to hit, getting that potential D3 to D6 mortal wounds on average to the whole army, or a majority of the army that's nearby Abaddon, is going to be pretty nasty. It's also good for mind games. So, for example, if you want to make sure that your opponent plays a bit cautiously around the vehicles or any kind of model that can, blow up, you want to make sure your opponent is aware of that. Don't be that guy and just go, yep, here's now D6 mortal wounds. Say that you have this stratagem and your opponent will play it differently. Problem is, though, it's very weird. So you need to be within 18 inches, which is doable, and thankfully there's no line of sight requirement. But if you're using like Cypher, which is again an ideal unit for this, Chaos Lord with jump pack, just really, really good. Especially with a Shroud, you can be within that 12-inch to 18-inch range, where you are out of targeting range, but you are in range for using this detachment. Even a Lord Discordant. Lord Discordant is actually quite good because obviously they are 14-inch move now. You can just hide it behind cover, detonate something, then next turn move 14 inches, charge whatever's nearby, and then probably kill it because the Lord Discordant hits absurdly hard now. But yeah, either way, I do quite like the detonate detachment. It's been a staple in a lot of Alpha Legion lists, even in like 8th edition. I think it was still around, where you just have the automatic detonate, which is pretty good. From all sides, so this one is at the start of your charge phase, Heretic Astartes unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to charge rolls made for your unit for each other Heretic Astartes unit from your army that has made a charge move this phase. I've given it to a maximum of 3. I've given it a 4 up, but upon reflection, I would probably give it a 7. So I'd give it a good 7 out of 10 instead of a 4. It's situational though overall, because on that go turn, so I'll explain. So the primary strength of this is that if you swarm in a particular unit with your cultists, as they'll reliably get into combat, considering that they are, majority of the time infiltrated, so you can get quite close to your opponent. You can then charge your cultists into a unit, or charge your legionaries into a unit, or any unit really. It says, Heretic Astartes, it doesn't specify. You can, charge cultists or legionaries, which are majority of the time going to charge in anyway. If you deep strike in with Terminators, for example, and you've got a unit of 5 to 10 Terminators with a Sorcerer attached to it, which is a big staple in a lot of my Chaos Space Marine lists, getting a 6-inch charge potentially from deep strike, because it doesn't specify that you have to charge into a unit, so the same unit. It gives you the ability to charge into different units across the battlefield and just get that potential +3 to your charge from deep strike, which is turning a 9-inch charge to a 6-inch charge. And then obviously on top of that, the Sorcerer gives you the reroll charge rolls anyway, so it's a pretty much guaranteed charge unless you just completely botch the rolls. Again, sometimes if you've only got like one unit you really want to charge, or that's within range, I've seen it before where 3 units of cultists have charged 1 unit on the board, and they've literally not been able to get into combat with it because the unit that wanted to charge in, so the Terminators, aren't able to do anything because they can't get base to base due to the cultists just swarming them. But yeah, other than that though, in all honesty, I would say this is like a 7 out of 10. It's very, very helpful if you're wanting that like one go turn, which is again always nice, but Alpha Legion don't really play like that. They can do, but they don't play honest Warhammer, let's put it that way. Next up we have Coils of Deception. Movement phase just after a Heretic Astartes unit from your army has fallen back. That Heretic Astartes unit has the ability to shoot in a turn in which it fell back. So I've given that a 7 out of 10 as well, that's good. Fall back on shoot on anything in your army is pretty good, so it allows for actions to be used on an objective. So for example, if you have a unit that needs to fall back and do an action, you can do it. Once that's done, you'll be able to essentially move that unit back, do an action, and then hopefully another unit from your army that's postured and positioned very well can then charge in and kind of keep that unit busy, or kill it, depending on what it is. So then obviously you can keep scoring. As a result, most of the time it'll make it very unlikely that the unit which fell back could be interrupted at all or killed outright. In addition to this, big guns never tire on your vehicles, allows them to shoot in combat anyway, even if it is at -1 to hit. So for example, something like a Vindicator really doesn't care because it's already got the Siege Shield ability. Excuse me. Siege Shield ability, which allows it to just shoot without any kind of penalties for engagement range. While sometimes it can be nice to, get rid of the -1 to your hit rolls. Again, depending on if you like hitting with, like, I don't know, Predator, and you need them shots to go through, it's a lot easier to hit on 3s. But there are ways to get access to full rerolls to hit in the army. So most of the time it is better to stay in that combat and then hit on 4s with full rerolls to hit than hitting on 3s with no rerolls. But yeah, particular standout unit on this is Obliterators. Seeing as Obliterators are infantry and don't have access to pistols, if they are tied up in combat, they're basically useless. So falling back and shooting not only allows them to have more activations during the game and increase their overall usefulness. Obviously, every time you bring Obliterators, they have that one big turn and then they seem to fall off. But with this, having the ability to fall back and shoot if they're tied up in combat, because your opponent's going to know if they let the Obliterators just keep firing, it's going to be a nightmare for them to deal with, because the Obliterators can fit quite a lot of shooting profiles. So they've got they've got 3 shooting profiles. They're pretty much good into a majority of things. Your opponent will probably want to tie them up with some kind of chaff unit or try and kill them outright, because Obliterators are quite tanky. Either way, though, being able to fall back and shoot on a unit of Obliterators is fantastic. So next up we have Pick Them Off. So shooting phase, 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack that is targeting a unit below starting strength, you can reroll the hit roll. If it's below half strength, you can reroll the wound roll as well. I have given this an 8 out of 10. I think this is great. So it's essentially just a ranged version of the Warp-Sighted Butcher ability from the Master of Executions. So like I said, full rerolls to hit if they're below half strength. So below starting strength, which means if you've taken a wound off something, that's below starting strength, which is really, really nice because it's very easy to get that wound off in most circumstances. The main thing is if it's below half strength, mainly. Excuse me, sorry, I had to mute my mic for yawning. If it's below half strength, then you're going to probably kill it anyway, but having the ability to get full rerolls to hit and full rerolls to wound on something like a Forge Fiend, or even a Land Raider or Obliterators, for example. Like I said, Obliterators can get access to full rerolls to hit. Predators are going to really like this, because obviously they've got quite a lot of damage, so your Disruptor Predators are going to really, really enjoy this. Vindicators as well, so Vindicators being able to get d6 plus 3 shots and then re-rolling every hit. You can fish for those sustained hits because you're probably not going to need lethals, especially against something with strength 14. It's very unlikely you'll need that. Units like Forge Fiends will benefit a lot more from the re-rolling wounds due to the dev wounds, but units like your Obliterators will benefit more from your full rerolls to hit. So for example, I'm going to get a couple of dice here, so we're going to do some re-rolls for the Obliterators. We'll do the Melt profile, which is d3 shots. That is 4 shots because we got a 2 and a 6. Hitting on 3s, re-rolling all hits. We're going to Dart Pact as well for sustained. So that is 4 hits because we missed 1 and we got a 6, so that's for the sustained. Wounding, I don't know, let's say 3s. So that's 3 wounds, AP minus 3. Say we're shooting a Land Raider, for example, so 5 ups. All fail, that's 14 damage. Not 14 damage, it is 12 damage, because it's 4 damage a hit. But if that was in Melter range, that's 18 damage, so that one-shots a Land Raider. And all that from being able to reroll hits, never mind wounds. Obliterators, again, very swingy. I do quite like them, though. But, like I said, if you're struggling to take wounds off something, I would probably say use a cultist mob to, use the grenade stratagem. So even if it's like 1 wound, you can essentially just, run close to a a unit that you want to like kill. So, for example, a repulsor. That's the first unit that comes to mind, or another land raider. Throw a couple of grenades at it. You know, plink a couple of mortal wounds off, even just one. And then getting your Vindicator or whatever vehicle it is to just shoot the absolute, you know, feathers off it is going to be absolutely devastating for your opponent. That while that is 2 command points, it's 2 command points that's very, very worthwhile. Cultist mobs as well are going to most of the time be within range, especially the ones that you've infiltrated, because obviously they're going to be move blocking, so your opponent's going to try and get near them to kill them. But yeah. In addition as well, our infantry don't really benefit from this, it's primarily as vehicles, so you won't need 4 rerolls to hit on a Lord and Legionaries unit for shooting, and you don't need it on Terminators because they already get 4 rerolls to hit when they Dark Pact anyway, which is what you're going to be doing. But yeah, it is nice to have, and I still think this is really, really good, but it's primarily for your vehicles and your shooting units that benefit more from this. Next up we have Relentless Pursuit. So your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit ends a normal advance or fallback move. So one Heretic Astartes infantry or Heretic Astartes mounted unit from your army that is within 9 inches of an enemy unit and not within engagement range of that unit, or one or more enemy units, you can make a 6-inch normal move. So that I've given this a 9 out of 10. It's just a reactive move. 9 out of 10 because reactive moves are very, very strong. Unfortunately, you can't do it when something deep strikes next to you because it doesn't count as having made a normal move that turn. So you can't avoid deep strike, unfortunately. But it's very, very good on cultists. You don't necessarily need to move away from a unit. So if for example, let's say, I don't know, you've got a couple of cultist units in the center, or a unit of 20 cultists in the center, and your opponent moves up a melee unit to stage, you know, behind cover because you've got the sight lines covered with your vehicles and you're shooting. You can then move the cultist unit 6 inches, because it doesn't say it has to be within 9 inches. Sorry, it doesn't have to say line of sight. If it's within 9 inches, you can then move the cultist 6 inches into the open to block the unit. So they have to charge that 20-man unit, and you can potentially gimp their, take the wind out of the sails and force them to, run either into a different direction or to fight a unit of 20 cultists, which they'll probably kill. But either way, they're fighting cultists. You're not really going to care. If your opponent positions 1 inch away from a Lord and a Legionaries unit, you can also make a guaranteed charge into a 7-inch charge, giving that ability to pretty much just go, yep, you're not going to get into engagement range this turn. While granted it is a 7-inch charge, and there are ways to get access to reroll charges on a majority of factions in some circumstances, being able to turn it from a guaranteed to a 7 inches, again, I'm going to take that because you're more likely to survive in that circumstance. Works on mounted, so for example, your bikers and your Lord Discordants really like this. They're already quite quick. While it's only 6 inches and both units move a lot faster than that, it's always nice to have in case you do need something to move behind cover or get out of your opponent's line of sight, or even, like I mentioned with the cultists, move blocking. I've had it before where bikers have, because of the oval bases that they've got, it covers a surprisingly high amount of ground. You just move them to the side and then move them up, and you pretty much just essentially roadblock the place where you need to be. So your opponent has to get through that, and bikers are surprisingly quite tough. While they are only T5 3 wounds, and there's a lot of 3 damage weaponry out there, it's still very, very nice to have bikers in your lists. I still think bikers are very useful. And obviously on a Lord Discordant, being able to, let's say you've had a fight with a unit and you've killed it and you're out in the open, if your opponent has a very potent melee threat that's nearby that can run next to it, you can then, move out of the way for that. Or just even move behind cover if your opponent's got some shooting. And obviously that means as well, sometimes it acts as like a deterrent. So if I move my Lord Discordant up and my opponent goes, right, if I move within 9 inches of him, he's just going to reactive move to get out of the way, I will move most of my army this way, and then obviously you can play accordingly and deal with your opponent essentially bottlenecking himself to avoid getting charged by the Lord Discordant, which is again something you can always bend in your favour. Only 1 CP as well, it's only command point, so you can use this for free on your Lord units, which is nice. And also you can use the Soul Link, so for example if you have a Master of Executions with Soul Link and they're attached to a unit with, I don't know, Bile or I don't know, any other unit that can get this enhancement, you can just get it for free on that one if you need to. Works on units which fell back as well, so if you've got, for example, a unit that's moved into melee range and you fought it and charged it and they try and fall back, you can then use this to move closer to them within an inch. So while you do not get within engagement range of them, it's still very nice to have. If you charge a vehicle like a Predator or a Repulsor, if they decide to fall back and shoot you, then they're probably able to move your unit away from them, behind cover or line of sight blocking terrain. So for example, let's say you've jumped behind a rock or a building to charge a Predator or a Repulsor. You fight the Predator, you don't kill it, the Predator then falls back instead of shooting, because it doesn't want to shoot at the -1. So it'd be hitting all 5s, because your Chaos Lord is more than likely going to do a lot of damage to a Predator. As a result of that though, when that falls back, so it doesn't hit on 5s, it hits on 4s instead, it will be bracketed. You can then move the guys back behind the ruins, so you're not able to get shot, which is fantastic. In addition to this as well, if you have a unit within reach of a Rhino, you can reactive move back into the Rhino to avoid potential shooting and charges. So quite a popular unit at the minute is Bile with 10 Chosen. You can use a Rhino that's parked nearby to protect them, so while they all have to end within, I think it's 3 inches in order to re-embark into a Rhino. It's still very, very nice to have the ability to do that, because you can do some shenanigans, which is very on brand for Legion, for the Alpha Legion. Better with a Land Raider as well, because obviously the Land Raider's bigger, has better shooting, but obviously it's more expensive. And last but not least, we have Scramble Coordinates. Start of the reinforcement step of your opponent's movement phase. 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, enemies that are set up on the battlefield from reserves cannot be set up within 12 inches horizontally of your unit. I've given it a 7 out of 10. I think this is good. You could potentially bump it to an 8. Again, the reason why is because it's extremely good against 6-inch dip strike units like your Death Shroud. Also very good into Blood Angels, because they do like to send in like the Sanguinor, Sanguinary Guard, Dante, any kind of jump pack infantry that's got deep strike you can't get nearby. Another thing that came to mind was something like the Hypercrypt Legions from the Necrons, Grey Knights, any kind of, even the demons, demons hate it, like with the 6-inch deep strike from the Aura from the Greater Demons. If you stand next to one, you can't deep strike it because of the Aura. That's, again, it's just really, really good. It's probably best used, like I've said here, on a unit of 20 cultists. Well, I'll just explain the points first. It's probably easier for me to do it. So while Grey Knights have access to very lethal chaff clearing units like Purifiers, and Death Guard have access to a lot of indirect fire and anti-infantry shooting, so obviously cultists will be afflicted, and they'll also be, if they are being shot at, they'll probably die because of toughness 2 if they're within the contagion aura. If you screen appropriately with a unit of 20 cultists, then you're covering a lot of ground and potentially taking units, potentially taking movement away from a hard-hitting unit, which will be able to kill most of your units which you want to keep alive. Even if you manage to keep them away from deep striking for a turn, you've already made your points back and forced your opponent to commit shooting into your cultists, which is exactly where you want them to be shooting. As I've said in other videos, if your opponent isn't shooting your important units, your cultists are doing the job. One issue is that your cultists can be spread out and cover a lot of ground, but conversely it's a very monkey paw deal where, yeah, you can cover a lot of ground, but it also means you're a much easier thing to shoot or melee. So you can cover a lot of ground with a cultist, but if you lose one, you lose in between 1.5 inches or 2.5 inches of coverage if one of them does die. which can potentially be enough to allow your opponent to take advantage of it. But realistically speaking, around turn 2 or 3, you want to make sure your cultists are, to get optimal use of this, you want to make sure your cultists are within the centre of the board, spread out, pop the stratagem, stop any kind of deep strike BS from kicking off. Like I said, even if it's for a turn, you're forcing your opponent to essentially delay their attack, which, again, can potentially mean the difference between scoring and winning a game. So the standout units that I've decided, we'll go over them very quickly. So the first one is the Warp Talons. This isn't in particular order, by the way. This is primarily just for, you know, it's stuff that came to mind pretty much. So Warp Talons, 10-man unit, so they're extremely lethal still. No one's denying the efficacy of a Warp Talon unit. Strength, despite the lack of damage, is still quite high. You don't need to spend a command point for rapid ingress the majority of the time, as you'll control the mid-board, turns 1 and 2. So you can drop these guys down in your side of the board from the mid-board, and then obviously, because next turn you can hide. Drop them down, hide them. Next turn you can move up and then charge, because they've got 12-inch move and fly. And obviously that'll save you a command point as well, which you're probably going to be needing. And seeing as this detachment likes movement shenanigans but lacks damage, the Warp Talons will help shore up the damage, because obviously they've got 5 attacks each, strength 5, -2, 1 damage with twin link. So they're very, very potent. And then obviously once they've killed something, which is probably going to be a thing, you're just going to take them off, and then they're horrible to play against. They're a nightmare to play against. Cultist Mob. Again, one of the best units in this detachment, primarily because they're just extremely useful despite being chaff. They're the only unit in our army which has sticky objectives, and as a result they can be placed as chaff for our harder hitting marine-bodied infantry and vehicles. They're a core part of this detachment, primarily as a unit of 3 are given the ability to infiltrate and sticky the mid-board early. Infiltrators act as great move blockers, screening units from deep striking, and are an ideal unit for the scrambling coordinate stratagem, which is what I mentioned earlier, due to the sheer amount of them on the board. You're going to lose quite a lot of them, but they'll make the points back every time. The cultists are exceptionally good in this detachment. Another unit that's a standout is the Chaos Lord, only when brought with a Shroud of Obfuscation though. Allows a very fast-moving fly model with decent melee capabilities to get lone operative and stealth, which are superb defensive buffs, as the model itself is quite easy to kill. The model can act as a harassment piece, skirmisher, scoring unit, and an area denial unit. They can reliably kill backline infantry to some degree, and take your opponent's deployment zone objective if they have guarded it poorly. Stop deep striking to some extent, obviously because they can't deep strike within 9 inches of him. And then act as a difficult to pin down unit for your opponent to deal with. And last but not least, we have the Master of Executions with Soul Link or Shroud of Obfuscation. So being able to get a lone operative plus stealth melee threat, which can move around and pick off Space Marine /2 wound infantry or other lone operative characters fairly reliably, is extremely nice to have. So it's very similar to Lucius the Eternal or Mephiston, except if you kill a character you're able to get 1 command point back due to the ability that the Master of Executions has. You can spend 1 command point to use grenades on a unit to get the benefit of the warp-sighted Butcher. So you can, essentially the way it would work is you walk into a unit, throw grenades at it for a command point, plink a couple of wounds off if you desperately need that unit to die. Alternatively, you can just shoot it with a vehicle. But then again, you might not always have a vehicle nearby, or even if you're damaging it, you've got a bolt pistol, so you're not really going to do much damage. But either way, grenades to guarantee mortal wounds on the unit majority of the time. Once that's done, you then charge in, you get 4 rerolls to hit, and obviously you've got precision, so you want to take off that character ASAP, and the rest of the damage goes through. So we'll do a little test now while we're here. So if I'm not mistaken, let me just remind myself of the Master of Executions stat line. It's either 5 or 6 attacks. I'm edging towards 5 attacks. Let me just double check. I really ought to have had this on hand in all honesty. Yep, so it's 5 attacks, acts of dismemberment. So we are going to be dart pacting for sustains. So we're going to hit on 2s. Rerolling all hits. Wow, okay, I've got 3 6s. Okay, the dice gods favour me today, apparently. So that is... Let me get one more dice. We've got an extra 3 hits, so that's 8 hits overall. No need to reroll, because we've just got an absolute boatload of sustained hits. Strength 7, so we'll be wounding Space Marines on 3s. So that is... We've failed to wound 3 times. So without... obviously, this is without rerolls. We've got 1 dev wound, so Space Marine dies, or the character takes 2 wounds. These 4 will be saved at a 4 pinball. They failed every single one, so that's 1 character dead. And 2 or 3 more Space Marines dead too. But what we are going to do is we're going to re-roll the ones that weren't devastating wounds, because if we've got below half strength, we obviously get full rerolls to wound as well. So we'll just do that. Another dev wound. Another dev wound. Failed 2. Got ease, that's fine. So 4 ups. 1 goes through, that's fine, so these 2 are fine. So that is 6 dev wounds, so we've killed the character outright, we've killed another Space Marine, and we've killed 2 more Space Marines. So you kill the character and obviously you'll get the command point back. They'll probably die on the punch back, but I don't think Space Marines in combat, unless they're like Blade Guard or something, they're not really going to kill a Master of Executions. They've got like, what, chainswords, if you're lucky, maybe less. But let's say if he's going in, let's say for argument's sake as well, we'll do another one. So let's say he's going into a unit of jump pack intercessor, jump pack Death Company, Blood Angels. So hitting on 2s, rerolling hits. So that's all hits, and we get a sustained. So we've got 6 hits. Strength 7 into toughness 7. So that'll be 3s. 6 of the dev wounds. So that is 5 wounds, no dev wounds, 5 ups. They all fail, so he's killed the entire unit. Yeah, he's quite scary in melee, let's put it that way. Alternatively as well, if he's got Soul Link, you can switch him out and get the, what you call it, the +1 strength, +1 attack, +1 AP in melee, which makes him extremely scary and allows him to use a stratagem for free. So while he does give up the rerolls to hit and wound in melee for the warp-sided butcher, he does get the ability to get a free strat. So grenades if you need the damage from range just before you attack, reactive move, anything like that. But yeah, we will, for argument's sake, we are going to do another dice roll. So we're going to get him with the chance for glory. So he's going to have 6 attacks this time at strength 8, -3. 3 damage with dev wounds, so hitting on 2s. That is 5 hits because we missed 1. We would have been able to re-roll that. Strength 8, so 2s if we're wounding Space Marines. 6 of the dev wounds, it's fine. 2s. 5 ups. So they make 2. You've done 3 dev wounds and 2 regular wounds at 3 damage, so you've killed 3 infantry with that. In my opinion, it's probably better to just bring him with a shroud if you are going to bring it, but there are better people to run the shroud on. Overall though, I'll go into a bit more detail here. So the strengths, we have excellent board control, so this detachment sacrifices damage and durability to some extent for exceptionally good board control. It's very unlikely your opponent can control the board as well as you will be able to, simply due to the fact that you've got 3 legionary units with characters and 3 10 to 20 man units of cultist mobs stringing out across the board and potentially blocking your opponent in their deployment zone for a turn. One of the best detachments for countering deep strike, as mentioned earlier, being able to reliably counter 6-inch deep strikes and armies that rely a lot on reserve and deep strike in place to win is wonderful. Being able to delay a very nasty unit arriving, even if for a turn, or forcing your opponent to put them in a less than ideal spot simply to how they've screened, is game changing. So how you've screened can genuinely win you the game, and will win you the game in certain circumstances. Very good if you're looking to get better at the game as well. So as mentioned in the weaknesses section, which I will get on to shortly, the detachment is quite hard to play well. due to the ridiculous amount of moving parts, the complexity of the enhancements, seeing what's appropriate for whatever scenario you encounter, etc., and how much it relies on different shenanigans to win. However, this can be seen as a positive, as every loss is a lesson, and every win that you get proves you are getting better as a player. You're not being carried by overtuned rules. Most of the time you'll win as Deceptors because you're just a better tactician. Obviously you'll win sometimes because you'll either roll really hot and your opponent rolls poorly, but that's just a dice game, unfortunately. But every win is a guaranteed, like, yeah, I've won that because I'm better. In addition, it also doesn't play Honest Warhammer. So Honest Warhammer is a term used to primarily describe stuff that's easy to understand, like fair play, quote unquote, it's called here, which I don't necessarily agree with. It's a bit arbitrary on that, but yeah. E.g., like your tank's hard hitting and durable, infantry capture objectives and do actions, etc. Most Chaos Space Marine lists that play Honest Warhammer usually involve shooting the opponent with vehicles and charging into them with your melee to decide who wins. So, like, for example, I'm going to shoot you with my Vindicator, I'm only going to shoot your tanks, and then I'm going to shoot, I'm going to charge my scary guys into your scary guys, and, we'll let the dice decide who wins. This detachment does not play like that at all, which is very on point for Alpha Legion. You rely a lot on movement tricks, minimizing engagement and forcing your opponent into unfavourable scenarios, which can be annoying for them. This does not mean you can or should use gotcha moments or obfuscate any rules, which may be complicated, like Soul Link. Play reasonably, not honestly. Alpha Legion. The weaknesses. Rules doesn't buff the damage, focus primarily on shenanigans and utility play, so while we innately can hit hard with our units with Dark Pact, we're not going to put out numbers that Renegade Raiders, Creations of Bio, or Pact-Bound Zealots levels of damage, because we're just not going to be able to. More of an acknowledgement, though, than a weakness, but it's still something that you need to keep in mind. Much like the Cultist detachment, this detachment is very unique, and is difficult to get to play well. It's not difficult as Chaos Cultist in my opinion. This is arguably the second most difficult to play well with out of the Codex. You need to know a lot about positioning, how and when to trade appropriately, optimizing your movements for screening and move blocking. Your opponent's not really going to know how to play against these, at least on average, so you'll have the advantage for a while. However, when your opponent eventually learns to adapt, or you do encounter somebody who has played against this style of play before, it's going to be an uphill battle, although conversely by that point you'll have got far more familiar with the detachment, so that's good. At that level you'll be understanding the detachment and the nuances a lot more, and your opponent will be playing better as well, so then you can think of other out of the box ideas. But yeah, so no durability support as mentioned earlier. Our units in this detachment don't have any access to -1 to wound or hit, or even armor of contempt, or even a cover stratagem or a feel no pain. So Chaos Space Marines aren't particularly like difficult to kill. Like, it's quite easy for them to get shot off the board sometimes, because you do have like a lot of shooting you have to deal with. So the best durability, like I said here, best to adopt a boxing philosophy when playing this detachment, meaning that the best durability is not to take the hit but to avoid it completely via good movement and positioning. Why would I get punched in the face when I can just dodge the punch and move out of the way? That's essentially the thing you've got to do with the Alpha Legion. Why would I willingly get shot when I can just move out of the way and hide behind cover? Why would I fight fairly when I can just drop 10 Warp Talons in behind my lines, have them run up, shred whatever I need to kill, and then just bounce back up into strategic reserves? Don't play fairly with this detachment. Play like the Alpha Legion would. So like sucker punching, like tricks and schemes and nasty play. Like, don't play Honest Warhammer with this detachment. If that's something you enjoy though, you'll love this detachment. And finally, while the movement is great and can honestly win your games, I'd much rather have the damage instead in most circumstances. So while the argument can be made that we do have units which hit hard without any support, so your Lord and Legionaries are a standout, Terminators, Warp Talons, etc., we're ignoring the fact that the other detachments like Pact-Bound Zealots, Creations of Bile, and particularly Renegade Raiders are more reliably getting tournament wins because they're able to amplify our already good damage to obscene levels. So Renegade Raiders, for obviously you've got Assault, and increase AP fighting enemies on an objective by 1. So if you're in melee, you get AP2 legionaries that go to AP2 chainsword legionaries, AP3 heavy weapons, AP4 on your Chaos Lord with the Chance for Glory, Obviously, you get your increased AP shooting on objective, so it counts as cover most of the time. You know, with your Predators, that's AP -2 if they don't have cover. Just really, really nasty. Creations of Bile, infantry just hit obscenely hard. As I'm sure people are already aware, Creations of Bile are scary good, in melee especially. Shooting wise, obviously you've got Pat-Bound Zealots as well that can add to that. While they're not as manoeuvrable as Renegade Raiders or Creations of Bile on average, your Pat-Bound Zealots, obviously, as I mentioned in the review, if you spike the damage with Pat-Bound Zealots, it's scary, like a lot of damage. Especially with the amount of rerolls they've got with Chaos Undivided on like a Forge Fiend or Obliterators, for example. Mark and Nurgle Vindicators are a big standout here. Even in melee, like Marcus Lanesh Terminators, Mark of Khorne Chosen, just anything like that is just really, really good. Here's a list though, if you want to pause at this point. I will briefly read through it. This one is a bit of a mix and match, so it is quite difficult to understand the logic behind it, but I'll explain. So we have 1,990 points overall. We have a Chaos Lord with a Demon Hammer and a Plasma Pistol. He's going to be equipped with the Cursed Fang. That'll bring him up to 90 points. Chaos Lord with a Jump Pack. He's going to be 95 points with the Shroud of Obfuscation, as mentioned earlier, as a standout unit. Cypher is going to be the Warlord of this detachment, mainly because he's incredibly easy to keep alive with Lone Operative. We're including the Dark Commune here. We're going to attach them to our unit of 20 cultists, which are going to be in the battle line here. They have a Soul Link enhancement, so obviously you can do, you know, a lot of shenanigans with that. Fabius Bile as well is being brought. He's going to be attached to the 10-man Chosen unit, which we're also bringing. For battle line units, though, just to recap, we're bringing one unit of 100 points worth of cultists, so that's 20. We're also bringing 2 separate units of 10. We're also bringing a unit of Legionaries. They're going to be equipped with a las cannon and 2 heavy melee weapons. The rest are just going to be put with chainswords. We're bringing 1 Rhino. That's primarily for Fabius Bile and the 10-man Chosen unit to get where they need to get to. We're also bringing a lot of fire support, so as in a majority of my list, because I do love to use them, Chaos Predator Destructors, we're bringing 2. And we're also bringing a Chaos Vindicator for that really heavy-hitting, armor-piercing damage that we need. Other data sheets, we've got the 10 Chosen, as mentioned earlier, 2 Obliterators, and a unit of 10 Warp Talons. So we've got 3 big threats that the opponent needs to focus down. So you've got the annoying Jump Pack Lord just jumping around everywhere causing problems. Cultists are going to be screening out with a Dark Commune, just run into a unit and in all likelihood probably kill it. Despite the fact that they do have obscenely bad melee damage, cultists on average. You know, +1 to hit, +1 to wound, advance and charge, and if they use Soul Link, obviously you've got the Dark Commune that can just cause a lot of problems in general. Either way though, this can be modified a bit, so if you wanted to bring, you can take out the Obliterators and the Dark Commune, which will give you 255 points to play with. You could then take 10 Possessed if you wanted to, which would bring the list to 1,975 points. If you need to give that unit a character, you can take out a Predator Destructor and get a Master of Possessions with Soul Link instead for 65 points. That'll give you 1,900 overall. And adding a Terminator Sorcerer on top of this on his own for an extra 80 points to walk around, Death Hexer unit and increase our damage and utility. That'll bring us up to 1,980. Alternatively, if you want to take out the Jump Lord and give the Shroud to the Terminator, you'll get brought to 1,900 points again. So that's potentially 2 extra units of cultists, or 1 big unit of cultists for 100. And obviously you get the Soul Link opportunity on the Master of Possessions, so he can use the Terminator Sorcerer's reroll, advanced rolls and charge rolls ability, and the Death Hex, which is really, really good in my opinion. But overall, I'd give this a 6 out of 10. It's a very high skill detachment. You're not going to be running this and expecting an easy win. You've got to work for it. You just need to be a good player to pilot a list well, otherwise you're just going to cripple yourself and struggle to get anywhere. You want to be smart with your movement, have a plan and stick to it. If you're a board control army focused on trading and movement shenanigans, don't play the game like you would COB or R&R, Renegade Raiders or Creations of Bile. You do not want to play like that. These play way, way different to that. We have exceptionally good movement. to compensate for the lack of damage and durability. So Dark Packs can to some extent shore up the damage, but it's important to know that we're still not hitting as hard as other detachments, as mentioned earlier, and aren't as durable as a detachment like Fellhammer, where you get the -1 to 1 from range. This detachment's enhancements are actually pretty decent, aside from one, which we're not going to mention. So it's good to see them being useful. Soul Link is great for utility. Curse Fang allows your Lord to kill characters easier. Obviously with the ridiculous like strength, what is it, strength 9 -3 or 4 AP, 3 damage dev wounds is crazy. And Shroud of Obfuscation, obviously you can get that on a Jump Pack Lord or a Terminator Sorcerer, and you can just be a pain in the backside for your opponent. Overall though, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you feel like my videos are fitting of your patronage, then I'd appreciate it if you could like and comment on the video. If you wish to share it with your friends or any kind of community you feel is appropriate for this video, then by all means feel free to share it. If the channel grows, obviously I'm trying to get to as many subscribers as I can, mainly as a personal thing. I just want to see how far I can get with this thing. But yeah, in the meantime, I appreciate your patience. I hope you all had a very good Christmas or holiday wherever it is that you're from in the world. And no matter what, where you are, wherever you are, always remember, praise the dark gods. Cheers, guys.